Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. You've seen knights in shining armor in movies, galloping majestically across green fields, clashing lances in tournaments, or rescuing fair maidens with effortless bravado. But what if I told you that the reality of fighting like a medieval knight was far grittier, slower, sweatier, and smelled strongly of rust, damp wool, and questionable onions? Tonight, we're not reenacting Hollywood romance. We're stepping into the bruising, back-breaking, and very smelly business of real medieval combat. Before we begin, let me ask something simple. If you enjoy these journey stories that are equal parts gritty history and a strange lullaby into the past, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of thing. And hey, leave a comment down below telling me what time it is where you're watching from. I love seeing who's wide awake at 2 a.m. in Chicago, or who's drifting off at 11 inches the morning in Tokyo. It makes this community feel like a tavern where we're all sitting by the same smoky fire. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's slip together into tonight's story. Our journey. How to fight like a medieval knight. Forget the fantasy novels. Forget the polished silver armor gleaming in the Sunday. The life of a knight was brutal training from childhood. Endless drills that left your muscles screaming, and real combat that was more about mud, exhaustion, and surviving a rain of arrows than gallantry. If you want to fight like a knight, you'll need more than courage. You'll need a stomach for stale bread, an iron grip, and the ability to smell like a forge for weeks on end. Tonight, you're the one picking up the sword. You'll be thrown into the past, waking up in a drafty hall where your armor waits by the bed like an iron coffin, and your squire is poking you awake at dawn. You'll eat food that tastes like boiled regret, strap on clothing that weighs as much as another person, and stumble into a day of combat drills, jousts, and possibly the kind of battlefield that will scar your soul as quickly as it scars your body. But it's not all doom. There's discipline, strategy, rituals of honor, and the strange poetry of the code of chivalry. You'll learn how to wield a longsword, why knights practiced wrestling just as much as swordplay, and why mounted combat was as much about holding on to a half-mad horse as it was about swinging a blade. You'll discover why a knight's armor wasn't as heavy as you think, but was still a sweaty oven that left you stumbling half-blind in the heat of battle. And you'll see why most fights ended not with graceful slashes, but with men grappling in the mud, choking on their own helmets, and hoping their squires would drag them out alive. By the end of tonight's journey, you'll know not just the techniques, but the feeling of fighting like a medieval knight, the pain, the terror, the absurdity, and the raw endurance it demanded. You'll go to sleep with the clanging of steel in your ears, but with the comfort of knowing you don't have to wake up tomorrow and do it for real. So, take a deep breath. Imagine the smell of smoke, sweat, and iron drifting through the air. Feel the weight of a sword in your hand, balanced yet heavy, promising glory and bruises in equal measure. And prepare yourself, because tonight, we're stepping into the boots of a medieval knight, one aching step at a time. You wake up choking on your own breath, not because someone's strangling you, but because the air in your room is made of smoke, dust, and last night's stew still fermenting in the corner. Your head is pounding, not from drink, no, nothing so fun, just the sheer effort of existing as a knight in a world that never discovered central heating, insulation, or quiet mornings. You try to stretch, but your legs hit something solid. The wall, your bed, is a narrow wooden frame with ropes stretched across and a lumpy sack of straw that crunches every time you move. You feel every single one of those ropes like a web of angry worms beneath your back. The blanket covering you is wool rough, scratchy, and reeking of mildew, horse sweat, and a faint hint of blood. You don't ask whose. Your body feels like it's been hammered by a blacksmith. Every joint aches. Your right shoulder pulses from yesterday's sparring match. Your left hand is swollen from gripping a sword hilt too long. You crack your neck, and it sounds like someone breaking kindling. The room is dim, but not quiet. Downstairs, someone is stoking the hearth with far too much enthusiasm. Your squire, probably. He's singing again loud, off-key, and with the kind of voice that could cause milk to curdle. Outside, roosters scream like they've just been stabbed. Dogs are barking, and a stable boy is already yelling at a donkey that refuses to move. It's dawn. Of course it's dawn. In medieval life, no one sleeps in unless they're dead or noble enough to be irrelevant. You blink the sleep from your eyes, which does little to improve the view. The room is bare stone, grey and mottled with old soot from the fire that died hours ago. The walls are cold to the touch, and the tiny window, just a narrow slit in the wall, lets in enough breeze to remind you that you live in a building designed more for defense than comfort. The floors are timber planks, warped and gapped from time and boot heel abuse. You can see the gaps between them. You can also hear mice skittering under them. Last week, one of them chewed through your belt strap. You made a mental note to kill it. You forgot. Now you have a chewed belt and a smarter mouse. You sit up slowly. The motion makes your back scream. You try to swing your legs out of bed, but your calves spasm as they hit the cold morning air. No slippers, of course. You don't own slippers. You own boots made of cowhide that have never once been dry, and greaves that left bruises the size of pears on your shins last month. You curl your toes on the stone floor and brace for the daily ritual of standing up and pretending your body isn't collapsing one joint at a time. You stagger to your feet like a wounded ox. Your knees crack. Your ankles make a noise like a cart rolling over gravel. Congratulations, you're vertical. That's already more than half the town can say before breakfast. A basin of water sits near the door. It's ice cold and has a dead fly floating in it. You splash it on your face anyway. Welcome to medieval hygiene. Sharp, brief, and unreasonably traumatic. Your armor is stored nearby well, not stored so much as dumped in a pile by your squire, who still doesn't understand the difference between sallet and sabaton. Your chainmail shirt is a coiled monster of iron and sweat. You swear it's gained weight overnight. Your breastplate leans against the wall like it's judging your posture, and your greaves still have dried mud from last week's patrol. The helmet? You don't even look at it. The last time you wore it, you nearly drowned in your own sweat. Your sword, however, that's different. It's propped up near your bed, resting against the wall with a kind of solemn pride. It's heavy, yes. Slightly nicked, yes. But it's clean. You always clean it yourself. Some men trust their squires with weapons maintenance. Those men now have stories about swords breaking in combat and dying with very surprised expressions on their faces. Not you. There's a knock at the door. Pause. Then it opens anyway. Your squire bustles in, all elbows and noise. He's 14, missing a front tooth, and seems to operate exclusively on enthusiasm and dirt. He throws your tunic across the room, completely missing the bed, and starts rambling about your morning schedule. Weapons practice at dawn, strategy review at mid-morning, and a minor land dispute to settle before supper. Also, the Baron wants to see you about something urgent involving a well and some stolen sheep. You grunt. It's the universal medieval noise for, fine, I hate it, but fine. You dress. First comes the undertunic. Linen, scratchy, always slightly damp because drying clothes properly is not something this century excels at. Then the Chaucer's tight woolen leg coverings that feel like itchy betrayal stretched over your thighs. Next, the gambeson, a padded jacket, thick enough to absorb some blows and thin enough to let you know it won't absorb most of them. Over that, the chainmail, Your squire helps you into it with a grunt. It pulls down on your shoulders like someone hanging a sack of wet bricks around your torso. It bites at your collarbones and slides cold iron links against your skin. Then the cuirass, your chest plate. It straps on with leather buckles that always twist the wrong way. By the time you're fully dressed, you weigh nearly 60 pounds more. And you're not even armed yet. You clomp down the stairs. Every step echoes. Wooden beams above your head are too low, and you have to duck. You swear this place was built for shorter men or taller complaints. The hall is quiet. Breakfast is a few cold beans and stale bread on a wooden plate. The bread is rock hard and dry, and you have to dip it in weak ale just to chew it. No butter, no eggs, no joy. You eat like someone being punished, which, in a way, you are. The fire in the hearth is low. The smoke curls upward and pools under the ceiling beams. It's warm near the flames, but everywhere else your breath still fogs. You sit on a bench that wobbles and stare into the fire for a moment. It smells of oak, sweat, and last night's spilled stew. You're not thinking about glory. You're not thinking about tournaments or damsels or songs sung about your victories. You're thinking about whether your groin armor is going to chafe again today. Welcome to the morning routine of a medieval knight. You don't wake to trumpets. You wake to a sore back, cold feet, and the scent of damp wool stuck in your nose like a personal insult. There is no glamour, no polished silver, just aches, noise, and the heavy knowledge that today, like every day, you might get stabbed by someone who doesn't know your name in a mud-soaked field you'll never see again. But still, you rise, you shoulder your steel, you nod at your sword like an old friend, and you go because you're a knight, not a legend, just a man in armor, trying not to die before lunch. You don't so much eat breakfast as survive it. The food is already waiting for you by the time you clomp downstairs in a full ensemble of aches and regrets. It's on a rough plank table that leans suspiciously to one side. There's no tablecloth, just wood, cracked and stained with the ghosts of meals past. Your squire has done his best, which is to say, not very well. There's a wooden bowl, still damp, with something that resembles porridge. If porridge were made of oats, sorrow, and the water left over from boiling last night's turnips. It's thin, grey, and tastes like someone once described flavour to it from across a field. You dip your spoon, which is really just a flat stick someone sort of whittled once, and take a bite. It slides across your tongue with all the appeal of wet gravel. No sugar, of course. Sugar is expensive. Nobles hoard it like dragons hoard gold. Spices? Hilarious. Cinnamon costs more than your horse. You chew mechanically, staring into the middle distance, while a fly buzzes confidently across the rim of your cup. The cup holds ale warm, flat, and weak. Water isn't safe. The last time someone drank from the well without boiling it, the village priest had to bless the whole street and dig 3 new graves. So instead, you drink ale. Everyone drinks ale. Even children. It's the least deadly thing on the menu. Your bread is a hard lump of barley and rye, so dense it might legally count as a weapon. You knock it against the table. It doesn't give. You tear off a piece with your teeth like a mutt chewing rawhide. There's no butter, no jam, no soft interior. It's all crust, just one unrelenting crust masquerading as food. You briefly consider skipping breakfast, but then you remember how much armor you're wearing today and how long the sword drills will be. If you faint on the training field, your fellow knights will laugh first and help second, if they help at all. So you finish the meal, not because you want to, but because your survival depends on it. After breakfast, it's time to clean yourself. And here's where the real despair begins. There is no bathroom, no sink, no soap dispenser gently whispering lavender-scented hope into your hands. What you have instead is a cracked basin of freezing water, a sliver of lye soap that burns like a curse, and a rough cloth that might once have been linen, but now mostly functions as medieval sandpaper. You splash the water on your face again, this time on purpose. It's so cold it makes your teeth ache. You grit them and keep going. You scrub your neck, your hands, and your armpits with quick, efficient strokes, not because it's refreshing, but because hygiene is the only thing standing between you and a fungal infection that requires priestly intervention. Baths? You wish. Full-body bathing is a luxury, something saved for feast days, major church festivals, or if you're bleeding so badly, someone has to find out where from. There's a bathhouse in the nearest town, of course. It's mostly used by those wealthier than you or less concerned with disease. The last time someone from your company went, they came back with glowing pustules and a strong recommendation to never touch the towels again. So you make do. You wipe. You splash. You scrape off the worst of the sweat, grease, and despair, and try to remember the last time you were fully clean. You can't. Teeth come next. Toothpaste? No. Toothbrush? Still no. What you do have is a rag and a pile of salt. You dip the rag into the salt and rub it across your teeth with the enthusiasm of someone sanding a floor. It stings your gums. That's normal. If it stops stinging, it means your nerves have given up. You finish the job with a rinse of weak ale, then spit into the fire, which hisses in protest. You check your nails. They're black at the edges, caked with earth, ash, and old leather dye. You clean them with your dagger, carefully. One slip, and you'll be limping into battle with a self-inflicted thumb wound that you'll never live down. Your hair is greasy. It always is. You run your fingers through it and do your best to twist it back into some semblance of order. Helmets will flatten it soon enough. Vanity is not a thing here. Not because you're humble, but because you gave up years ago. Your beard, if you have one, is wild. Knights are not known for their grooming habits. You trim it with shears once a month, if your squire remembers to heat the blade first. If he doesn't, you scream into a pillow and spend the next hour pretending you didn't. You pull on your hose wool, scratchy, always riding down in the middle of a march, then your tunic, your gambeson, and your armor. Each piece adds weight and complexity. You're not just getting dressed. You're layering yourself in discomfort, one buckle at a time. By the time you're fully armored, you've already sweat through your underlayers. And it's still morning. You glance into a polished bit of metal nailed to the wall. It's the closest thing you have to a mirror. The man looking back at you is tired, puffy-eyed and scowling. His hair is tangled, his beard uneven. His eyes have the dull, sleepless glaze of someone who hasn't had a warm bath or a good night's rest in a season. He's a knight. He's you. And he looks like he's about to be hit in the face with a mace sometime before lunch. You strap your dagger to your belt. It's not for combat. It's for food, rope, and the occasional threat. You always keep it sharp. A dull blade is a dead knight's mistake. You glance outside through the narrow slit of a window. It's raining. Again. The courtyard is a slurry of mud, manure, and crushed straw. Your horse is already saddled. Your squire waves at you with one hand and holds your shield with the other. You sigh. You grab your helmet, which smells like steel, mold, and the back of a dead man's throat. You do not put it on. Not yet. That comes later, after drills, after inspection, after the Lord gives his daily lecture about honor and chivalry. Usually, while sitting near a fire you're not allowed to enjoy. There's no cologne, no moisturizer, no soft towels, no scented candles or robes made of cloud-kissed fleece. There's you and the sharp sting of cold water, a wooden spoon, bread that could chip a tooth, ale that tastes like someone cried into it, and the gnawing awareness that your underarms will start to itch again by midday. You are clean by medieval standards, which is to say no one has fainted from standing near you yet. And that's about as good as it gets. You already feel the itch. It starts under the collar of your gambeson, a thick, padded coat that functions less like a garment and more like a medieval oven stitched out of old quilts and bad decisions. It's hot in the summer, stiff in the winter, and smells like it's been boiled in goat broth. It has. Twice. Not on purpose. You shift your shoulders, but the itch moves with you, a wandering ghost of discomfort. There's nothing you can do about it. Scratching through 3 layers of linen, wool, and metal is not an option. You learnt that the hard way when you once tore open your own sleeve trying to get at a flea bite. Your daily uniform is a puzzle box of textiles designed by someone who clearly hated joints. Let's break it down. First, the linen undershirt. It's the softest thing you own, which isn't saying much. It's thin, easily torn, and more holes than fabric at this point. You own 2. One's always being washed. That is to say, one's being beaten against a rock in the river by a teenager who thinks soap is a luxury for dukes. Then come the Chaucer's woolen tubes for your legs that itch like sin and sag after 15 minutes of walking. There's a drawstring involved. It doesn't work. Over that goes your tunic, usually wool, usually brown, occasionally patchy where moths have declared personal kingdoms. If you're lucky, it was dyed with woad or madder root, but mostly it's earth-coloured, because that's what happens when dirt is your primary design palette. Then the gambeson, that padded jacket again, thick layers of linen stuffed with rags, horsehair, and possibly a small population of lice. It's your foundation, the one thing that stands between your flesh and the chainmail, the bruises, and the slow, creeping chill of every medieval morning. Then comes the armour, the real weight, chainmail shirt, 1,000 little rings, each one lovingly hammered shut by someone with chronic hand cramps. It weighs more than your youngest sibling and sags like it knows too much. If you wear it long enough, it leaves marks on your skin, tiny impressions like scale, as if your body is slowly turning into a fish. Over the mail, if you're lucky or noble, you add plate armor. Not full plate. That's for the ultra-rich. You have a mismatched collection of pieces, one greave that fits, one that doesn't, a breastplate from a fallen knight that still has a dent over the heart, pauldrons you had to punch new holes into just to get them to sit right. Your helmet is the worst. You can't see, can't hear, and every breath fogs the inside until it feels like you're drowning in your own breath. There's a leather strap that digs into your chin, and it always smells faintly of rust and regret. And the shoes? Let's not even call them that. Your footwear is a pair of turn shoes, thin leather, stitched together like moccasins, with all the arch support of a soggy tortilla. They soak through instantly in rain and offer no protection from mud, stones, or aggressive poultry. No socks. Just a thin linen wrap around your toes that bunches up after half an hour and slowly evolves into a fungus delivery system. All of this just to get dressed. And it's not even noon. But let's say you survive the day. Let's say you make it back to your shelter. The place you sleep. The place that, by some twisted definition, is supposed to be home. It's a hall, a night's lodging, not a castle. You're not that important. You serve the local lord, and for your service you're granted a modest structure, possibly shared with other retainers, possibly freestanding near the keep. Either way, it's unimpressive. The outside is timber and wattle wooden beams filled in with woven sticks and daubed with a charming mixture of clay, mud, straw, and cow dung. The smell never truly leaves, especially when it rains. The roof is thatch, dry in theory. In practice, it leaks. Always. Water finds a way through the thick straw, dripping into buckets, onto blankets, or straight into your boots. There is no glass in the windows. That's for the barren. You get shutters, wooden boards that don't quite close all the way. In winter, the wind whistles through them like a ghost with asthma. In summer, you open them to let in the air. And instead, you let in flies. So many flies. The door doesn't lock. It just latches. And badly. You've jammed a spear through the handles more than once just to keep out drunk squires, wandering dogs, and that one pig that keeps trying to steal your bread. Inside, it's one room, maybe two. If you're doing well, there's a hearth in the center. Smoke rises from it, mostly, but there's no chimney, just a hole in the roof. On calm days, the smoke meanders upward and leaves. On windy days, it swirls around and fills the entire room like a miasma of failure. You sleep on a wooden frame with rope supports and a straw mattress. The ropes sag, the straw pokes, and at night you can hear the fleas plotting. Your blanket is wool. It keeps you warm, but also damp, and it smells like something crawled into it last month and gave up on life. Privacy? What privacy? If you share your hall with other knights or squires, you're sleeping shoulder to shoulder, snoring in a chorus, farting in symphony, and trying not to make eye contact with the man across from you who once killed someone with a soup spoon. There's a table, rough wood, uneven, a bench that wobbles, a few scattered tools, a chest that holds everything you own, spare hose, a second tunic with an unspeakable stain, a whetstone, and a pair of gloves with the fingers mostly intact. There is no decoration, no family portraits, no fine tapestries. You might have a saint's charm hanging over the hearth if you didn't sell it for ale 2 weeks ago. A wooden rosary, maybe, carved crudely, half missing. The air inside is thick, always, with smoke, sweat, and whatever the dog dragged in. It sticks to your clothes, your skin, your soul. In winter, it's freezing. The fire barely keeps you alive. You wake up with ice in your water cup and frost on your beard. In summer, it's an oven. You peel off layers just to breathe and sleep on top of the covers like a roasted ham. And the pests. Always pests. Mice in the walls, lice in the blankets, spiders in the rafters. One time, you woke up with a slug on your face. It didn't even apologize. You keep a dagger near your bed. Not for battle, just in case something rat, thief, drunk priest tries to climb in while you sleep. And yet, this is home. You've lived here longer than you can remember. The cracks in the walls know your moods. The smoke-smudged ceiling watches over your dreams. The same bench has held you up after bruising battles, long winters, and more than one disappointing stew. You don't love it, but you trust it. It shelters you from the wind, keeps most of the rain out. It's not comfortable, but it's yours. And in this world, that's rare enough to count for something. There's a moment every morning when your body whispers, "Don't get up, stay in bed, die here." And then you remember your master at arms has a voice like a siege trumpet and a stick long enough to poke you from across the yard. You rise, you dress, you strap your armor back on, even though your shoulders are still red and raw from yesterday, and you step out into the yard for another day of labor. Because being a knight isn't just about fighting, it's about working. And you don't get to say no. Training begins at dawn. The sky is still pink when you and your fellow knights and squires, still pretending not to cry, line up in the mud. The field stinks of manure and morning breath. Birds chirp, cheerfully unaware that you're about to be hit in the ribs for the next 4 hours. The first drill is footwork. Always footwork. You march. You pivot. You advance. You retreat. You do it again, then again, but faster, but lower, but with a sword raised, but without looking at your feet. But now on one leg, because Sir Baldwin has a training idea from the continent. You sweat, you slip, someone falls. Laughter erupts, followed by a curt shout, and 30 push-ups in chainmail. Then come the weapons. You're handed a practice sword, a blunted monstrosity that still weighs as much as a baby goat and hurts twice as much when it hits you. It's chipped, cracked, and vaguely sticky from something you hope is just old pitch. The drill is simple. Swing, block, repeat. You face your partner. He's your friend. Yesterday you shared bread. Today he's trying to cave in your collarbone. You grunt. You sweat. You bruise. You feel your teeth rattle in your skull with every blocked blow. You miss a parry and take a hit to the thigh that buckles your knee. The master at arms grunts approval. You're learning. And then, without warning, it's over. You're told to switch partners. New man, new bruises. You go again. If you're lucky, it's all drills. If you're unlucky, it's mock combat. You and 3 others are ordered to form up in full armor and fight a similar group to simulate battlefield conditions. You simulate them perfectly. Within 3 minutes, you're tripping over each other, swinging wildly, panting through your helmet, and trying not to vomit in your visor. Someone gets knocked down. Another rolls an ankle. Sir Hugh takes a spear shaft to the groin and lets out a noise no human should ever make. And still, the master-at-arms yells, "Keep your guard up," because there are no breaks in real combat, and this is what it takes to survive. But fighting isn't even half your day, because after sword work comes the horse. You think you know horses. You don't. Your warhorse is not a gentle beast. He's a mountain with hooves. His name is something like Breaker, or Bone Chewer, or Gerald, depending on the day and how much you've annoyed him. You groom him first, in theory. Mostly you get kicked in the thigh while brushing burrs from his flank. Then you saddle him with a war saddle that weighs more than your squire. You strap on a bridle, tighten the cinch, and whisper a prayer to Saint Eustace, patron of men who don't want to die falling off a beast they paid to ride. Then you mount. It's not graceful. You haul yourself into the saddle like a sack of potatoes with ambition. Your thighs scream. Your back protests. The horse flicks his ears and considers whether today is the day he throws you into a trough. You ride. You trot. You gallop. You practice swinging a sword from the saddle, trying not to fall off or accidentally decapitate a training dummy. You miss. You try again. You hit the dummy. It spins. The master-at-arms nods. Progress. Then comes the lance. The lance. Heavy. Unwieldy. Elegant in theory. In practice, a glorified tree branch you're expected to point at someone's face while galloping at full speed. You aim for a quintain, a rotating dummy with a shield on one side and a weighted bag on the other. Hit the shield too slow, the bag swings around and hits you. Guess what happens your first time? Right. The bag hits you. Hard. Right in the neck. You stay on your horse, barely. And the squire watching laughs so hard, he drops your helmet in the mud. You go again, and again, and again. By midday, your arms feel like wet ropes. Your hands are blistered. Your thighs are 2 shakes away from rebellion. And then, finally, you're told to dismount. You almost collapse when your feet touch the ground. Your legs no longer recognize gravity. You stumble to the well and drink water so fast you nearly drown in it. Lunch is a crust of bread and a hunk of cheese so hard it has its own knife. You chew with sore teeth and stare into space, wondering how many years your body has left. Spoiler, not many. Then comes the labor, because knights don't just train. You work, repairing your armor, sharpening your weapons, digging drainage ditches if the field is flooded, hauling supplies from the storehouse, supervising serfs who pretend not to understand your Latin, while they sneak turnips into their sleeves. Sometimes it's stable duty, scraping muck from stalls, reshoeing horses, wrestling with a mule that has the soul of a drunk baron and the teeth to match. Sometimes it's patrol riding the perimeter of your lord's lands, nodding to farmers, glaring at hedge thieves, and praying your horse doesn't step in another rabbit hole. And sometimes it's war, or at least rumors of it, a local border dispute, a feud between lords, a peasant rebellion, a tax issue that escalated. You gear up fast, you ride, you fight, and if you're lucky, you come back with only a limp. If you're unlucky, you come back on a cart, or not at all. But even in peace, even when the banners are furled and the swords sheathed, you're still working, training, preparing, surviving. Because this isn't a fairy tale. This isn't a tournament where the worst that can happen is a bruised ego and a broken lance. This is feudal life, hard, demanding, unrelenting. And every day you don't train, someone else does. And that someone might be across the field from you one day, eyes cold behind their visor, sword raised, and no interest in your excuses. So you swing the blade again, you ride the horse again, you clean the rust from your mail, dig mud from your boots, wrap your aching wrist, and keep going, because you're a knight. And knights don't get to be tired, they just get to be dead. You don't just carry steel into battle, you carry guilt, fear, a soul that may or may not be saved, depending on how sincerely you confessed before that last campaign. You carry prayers like armor, fragile, symbolic, and constantly in need of repair. Because to be a medieval knight isn't just to live by the sword, it's to live by the church. Religion isn't optional, it's the very spine of your existence. Every oath, every victory, every sin you commit, it's all being recorded, not on parchment, but in heaven. Every morning before your feet touch the floor, you make the sign of the cross, or you forget and then whisper a panicked prayer, just in case a demon noticed. You don't know what the demons look like, but you've heard stories. Black dogs in the woods, women who speak Latin backward, a man with goat eyes who once wandered into a feast and cursed the entire wine barrel with nosebleeds. You were taught early that your soul is under siege, and not metaphorically. Priests speak of Satan the same way the master-at-arms speaks of the French. Constant threat, imminent danger, eternal war. So you kneel, you fast, you confess, and confess, and confess again, because you never know what counts. Is pride in your swordsmanship a sin? What about laughing at the Baron's cousin when he fell off a horse? What about those dreams you've had about the blacksmith's daughter? You never touched her, but you thought things. Thought is sin. Desire is sin. Breathing sometimes feels like sin, so you visit the chapel. You kneel on stone that bruises your knees. You listen to Latin that you only half understand. You repeat the Paternoster like it's a shield spell. You cross yourself at every mention of death, judgment, and fire, and you mean it. You're not pretending, because you've seen death. You've seen what happens when the blade slips. You've seen good men scream for their mothers, eyes wide with fear, begging God to take them home. You don't want to end like that, so you tithe. You light candles. You donate to the local monastery, even if it means eating stale bread for another week. You wear a cross on a leather cord under your armor, pressed so tight against your skin, it's left a permanent impression. But religion isn't only prayer, it's fear, it's superstition. You believe in signs. A crow perched on the gate at sunrise means blood will be spilled. A dog howling at night means a soul has been taken. Spill salt, throw it over your shoulder with the left hand. A black cat crosses your path, you change direction. A coin found face down, bad luck. Throw it in the river, fast. You've seen knights who ignored these signs. They don't walk anymore. You believe in relics, saints' bones, pieces of the true cross, a vial of some bishop's finger water. You once fought beside a man who carried a splinter from St. George's lance sewn into his cloak. He took a spear through the gut 2 days later, but it missed his heart. He claimed it was the relic. Others said it was luck. Either way, he survived. You kept a piece of his blood-stained cloak, just in case. When you go to war, the chaplain blesses your sword. He sprinkles it with holy water. He speaks sacred words. And for a moment, just a moment, you believe you're more than a man. You're a divine weapon, God's own blade. But war doesn't always feel holy. Sometimes it feels like hell. Sometimes the screams don't stop echoing. Sometimes you can't sleep. Not because you're afraid of men, but because you're afraid of judgment. You've killed, you've looted, you've lied. Once you burned a village on orders and tried not to look at the children. You told yourself it was war, but the chapel is quiet, and the silence doesn't forgive. Souillure de penance. You walk barefoot in the snow to the shrine of Saint Sebastian. You whip yourself with nettles behind closed doors. You donate half your coin to build a hospital. And still, the guilt lingers. Still, you wonder, are you worthy of salvation? And then there are the others. The beliefs the church doesn't exactly approve of, but which everyone holds anyway. Witchcraft, ghosts, old gods. You've seen things. Everyone has. A woman in white standing in a burning field. A soldier pierced through the chest who still walked 2 more steps before collapsing. A light floating in the trees with no torch and no wind. You don't speak of these things loudly, but you believe you carry charms, a rabbit's foot, a bit of ash from a martyr's fire, a coin blessed by a wandering friar who may or may not have been blind in both eyes. You sleep with a dagger under your pillow, not for thieves, for things with no names. And if someone knocks on your door past midnight, you do not answer. Not without a prayer, not without your cross in hand. The church teaches that heaven watches over you, but sometimes it feels like everything watches over you, and not all of it is holy. Still, you cling to your faith. Because what else is there? In a world of blood and ash, where your best friend might bleed out in a ditch tomorrow, and your worst enemy might kill you with a lucky blow, faith is the only shield that doesn't rust. You light candles for the dead. You say their names. You ask the Virgin to protect you. You beg Saint Michael to guard your back in battle. You murmur the creed while sharpening your blade, because you know the truth. You will die. All knights do. No matter how strong your arm, how sharp your sword, how heavy your armor, death comes. But with faith, maybe you won't die in sin. Maybe you'll be carried to heaven, not for glory, but for repentance, not for what you did with your sword, but for what you confessed with your soul. You're starving. You've been starving since breakfast. Not the romantic kind of starving, lean and noble, brooding in torchlight. No, this is the deep, hollow, medieval kind. The kind that turns your stomach into a growling animal and your mood into a weapon. You sit at the long wooden table in the hall, shoulder to shoulder with other men who smell just like you. Sweat, steel, and disappointment. The benches creak under the weight of armor and exhaustion. No one speaks much. You're all too tired to bother. Dinner arrives in the same way it always does, in a haze of steam and mild regret. Your squire slams down a clay bowl of something allegedly edible. You look into it and see a thin broth floating over bits of vegetable, possibly meat, and something grey you decide not to investigate. It's called pottage. It's been called pottage for centuries. It will continue being called pottage until someone invents seasoning. You dip your spoon, a thick hunk of carved wood, into the bowl and bring it to your mouth. It's hot. That's the best thing you can say about it. The taste is neutral, earthy, wet. If boiled cabbage married a damp root and moved into a swamp, it would taste like this. If there's meat in it, it's probably mutton. Old mutton. from a sheep that lived a full life and retired before becoming dinner. It's chewy, stringy, and tastes like it knew it was going to end up here. You chew anyway, because you have to. Bread is served, but don't get excited. It's not warm. It's not soft. It's not fresh. It's hard, dry, and probably has more pebbles than grain in it. You scrape the mold off one edge and tear off a piece with your teeth like a wolf gnawing bark. There's cheese too, hard cheese, the kind that breaks teeth if you're not careful. You cut off a slice with your dagger and pray that it's not crawling with mites again. For drink, ale, always ale. It's warm, flat, and tastes faintly of sweat and old apples. But it's safe. Water isn't. You learned that the hard way when half your company got the flux from a well and spent a week turning the latrine into a haunted pit of suffering. Wine exists, but not for you. Wine is for nobles, bishops, and poets. If you're lucky enough to be invited to the baron's table, you might get a watered-down cup of it, served in a cracked goblet that still smells faintly of beeswax and sour berries. Tonight, though, you're not invited. So, it's ale again, and another bowl of pottage, and a slice of something someone calls pie. But you suspect started life as leftover goat organs held together with flour and optimism. The candles burn low as you eat. The air fills with noise, laughter, belching, the occasional snore from a man who fell asleep mid-chew. And then, finally, it's time for entertainment, which, in medieval night terms, means chaos. It starts with music, not the kind you're imagining, no elegant harps or delicate flutes. No, it's one man with a battered lute and two strings, playing something that might once have been a song, and another man pounding a drum that sounds like someone kicking a bucket full of angry bees. They sing loudly and badly. You nod along. You don't enjoy it, but pretending you do keeps morale up and also keeps the man with the drum from deciding your face looks like a better rhythm surface. Then come the stories, tales of dragons, saints, lost causes, and women who loved knights, despite their total lack of hygiene. You've heard them all before. Half of them you suspect are made up on the spot. One man swears he fought a French knight who wore no armor and couldn't be pierced by steel. Another insists he once saw a ghost riding a headless horse through the marshes near York. You sip your ale and let it all wash over you. Truth doesn't matter here. Stories are warm. Dice appear next. And that's when the mood turns. Knights gamble like their souls depend on it. Coins, daggers, boots, favors, even future chickens, you've seen it all thrown down on the table. The dice clack on wood like bones rolling in a tomb. Someone wins, someone loses, someone flips the table. A dagger is drawn, then a laugh, then a slap on the back, then more ale. You don't play tonight. Last time, you lost your second best cloak and had to walk back from patrol wrapped in a sheepskin. You haven't quite forgiven yourself. Someone brings out a flask of something stronger. Mead, maybe, or honey wine, or just bad ale with crushed herbs and reckless ambition. It burns going down. You cough. Everyone cheers. Another knight starts singing, loudly, badly, off-key and out of time. No one cares. You join in by the second verse, and then, when the mood is right, someone challenges someone else to a wrestling match. Chivalry? Honor? Not tonight. Tonight, it's about who can pin whom to the floor while half drunk, full of cheese, and wearing half a suit of armor. You watch two men roll across the rush-covered floor, knocking over mugs and scattering dice, their laughter mixed with groans. One of them bites the other. Everyone laughs. It's a kind of bonding, brutal, ridiculous, very medieval. You know what's next. Someone tells a joke that offends someone else, not on purpose, just badly timed. or poorly aimed, or involving someone's sister, tension, silence. Then someone breaks it with a toast to St. George or St. Cuthbert, or to not dying tomorrow. Everyone drinks. Crisis averted. For now, by the end of the night, the hall is filled with heat, stale smoke, and the scent of 30 men who haven't bathed in a week. The fire burns low. The music has faded into quiet muttering. Someone is snoring in the corner, arm draped over a dog who doesn't belong to him. You lean back on the bench, your belly full of questionable meat, and your head buzzing slightly from the ale. You're not happy, but you're not miserable, and that's rare. You look around at your brothers in arms. Some are bleeding from training injuries. One has a black eye. Another is still nursing a limp from a battle no one talks about anymore. And yet here they are, laughing, living, drunk. You feel for a moment like you belong, not to a court, not to a storybook, but to this world, this table, this madness. A knight in armor, drinking warm ale, listening to a lute with 2 strings, and trying not to choke on whatever's floating in your stew. There's a saying among the older knights: steel kills fast, but rot kills slow. And they say it with the quiet weariness of men who've survived swords and arrows, but not the things that fester afterward. Because in this world, the real killer isn't on the battlefield. It's in your lungs, in your gut, in the blisters on your heel that won't heal right, in the wound that looks fine one day and smells like death the next. You don't fear the blade, you fear the fever, and no one gets out clean. This morning, one of the squires didn't rise from bed. He was fine yesterday, laughing, sparring, eating stew like he hadn't a care in the world. Today, he can't move. His face is pale. His breath rattles like broken wood. His eyes don't seem to know where the ceiling is. You watch as the priest arrives, not the physician, not the barber surgeon. The priest, he anoints the boy's forehead, sprinkles holy water, murmurs the rites. You know what that means. No one's bothering with medicine. They're skipping straight to soul cleansing. You step back from the room, just in case. Because illness spreads fast in a place like this. You know what it means when someone starts coughing blood, or when the swelling under the arm gets hard and black. You've seen strong men go from sword ready to corpse in 3 days flat. You've seen fever burn the skin until it blisters. You've seen bowels melt out of someone from dysentery. You've smelled infection. It's always the smell first. A sweetness, sickly, wrong. Like meat left too long near the hearth. Once you smell it, you know the wound's gone bad. You don't say anything, just grab a cloth, brace the man's mouth with wine, and hope he passes out before the cutting starts. Because yes, there is medicine. In a way, there's the town barber surgeon. He smells like garlic and wine and carries his tools in a bloody sack. He'll lance a boil, set a bone, even pull an arrowhead from your thigh if you don't mind screaming. He uses wine to clean the wound. If you're lucky. If you're unlucky, it's just hot water and a quick prayer. Anesthesia? Hilarious. You get a stick to bite, or someone's belt to clench in your teeth. And if it's a bad wound, 2 men to hold you down. Sometimes it works. Sometimes the bleeding stops. Sometimes the pus goes away. But sometimes you just rot slower. For medicine, there are herbs, roots, infusions. Your local monk swears by willow bark. Good for pain. Boil it into tea and pretend it's doing something. There's also honey, surprisingly effective. You've seen wounds cleaned and packed with it. Flies love it, but it keeps the rot away. Then there's vinegar. Stings like sin, but they pour it on open gashes, like it's salvation. Charms too, bits of parchment with saints' names, worn around the neck, or pressed into the wound with wax. You've tried it all. Sometimes it works, mostly it doesn't. Leeches? Oh yes. Always leeches. The local physician swears they balance the humours. You don't know what humours are, but apparently you have too much black bile, or yellow bile, or not enough blood. The answer is always leeches. They stick to your skin, swell with your blood, and fall off eventually. If you survive, you're told it worked. You suspect it's just guesswork. Most medicine is. There's no understanding of infection, no germ theory, just theories, and saints, and whatever herb was growing nearest to the last sick person who died. You try not to think about it, but you do think about death. Every day, you carry it in your side pouch next to your dagger and your coin. It's in the scar on your hip that still aches when it rains. It's in the memory of your brother, cut once in the shoulder, dead, 3 weeks later, from bad air. It's in the empty bed beside yours from last winter, when half the hall came down with the flux and the floor ran slick with filth. You try to make peace with it. You pray, you go to confession, you donate to the chapel, you wear a cross on your chest and carry a relic in your pouch, St. Jude, patron of lost causes. You tell yourself you're ready. You lie, because it's not death that frightens you, it's the way it comes, not in battle, not quick, but slow, alone, shivering in your bed, slick with sweat, skin turning blue, no one visiting you, no one touching you, not even the priest, unless you're conscious enough to confess from 10 paces away, because once the fever comes, you're already gone in everyone's eyes. Even the rats avoid your side of the room, and if the plague comes, you don't even get the rites. You get the pit. No coffin, no shroud, just a cart, a bell ringing as it rolls past the hall. Bring out your dead. You've heard it before. You hope never to hear it again. And yet, for all this fear, you still fight, still train, still mount your horse every morning because you're a knight, and death is part of the job. The only real choice is how you die. Sword in hand, face to the enemy, or coughing up blood in the corner while the world pretends you were never there. You'd take the sword any day. You'd take 10 arrows before you'd take another visit to the surgeon with a boiling knife and a hymnal. But you don't get to choose. Not really. You just try to stay clean as possible. You avoid bad meat. You boil your water when you can. You don't share cups with the man who keeps coughing behind you. You bless yourself before every meal. And you pray to Saint Sebastian, the patron saint of plagues, because someone has to be listening. You think about heaven. Sometimes you wonder if all this suffering earns you a place there, if your pain counts for something, if your service, your loyalty, your daily agony adds up to redemption. You hope so, because otherwise, what was it all for? Just a long walk through blood and rot, ending in a hole? No, it has to mean more. It has to. So you light a candle, you clean your sword, you drink your willow bark tea, and you go to bed hoping that tomorrow you wake up hungry, not cold. You're not alone in this world, even if it feels that way sometimes, riding into war, bleeding in the mud, sleeping in a cold hall with men who snore like dying oxen. You still have people. Somewhere, someone waits for you to come home. If you're lucky, it's a wife. If you're very lucky, she's still alive. Marriage for a night isn't romantic. It's political, strategic, a way to gain land, favor, or allies. Love is optional. Property is not. You probably married young. She was younger, and you didn't court her with roses or poetry. You were introduced at supper, nodded awkwardly, and sealed the arrangement with a handshake and a sheet. She moved into your hall with a bundle of clothes and a blank stare. You didn't speak much. You barely knew her. But over time, something formed, not passion perhaps, but partnership. She manages the household, keeps the servants in line, sees that food is stored, that bread is baked, that the fire stays lit when you're gone for weeks. She mends your tunics, sharpens your wit, reminds you to wash your feet more than once a month. She knows where the dried meat is hidden, how many chickens were stolen last week, and which of your squires is sleeping with the miller's daughter. She's not a lady in waiting. She's the general of the domestic front, and you respect her. You don't say it aloud, of course. You grunt. You leave the last piece of bread for her. You bring her a ribbon from town when you remember. That's your version of affection. She works harder than you. You might wield a sword, but she carries everything else. And then there are the children. If you have any, they're probably already working. Boys start swinging wooden swords at 5. By 7, they're running messages or holding the horse. If they live to 10, they're tough enough to be squires, or shepherds, or sent off to a monastery. Girls learn faster how to sew, how to cook, how to duck when a drunk uncle stumbles into the kitchen shouting about taxes and God. They know how to smile politely when a nobleman's eye lingers too long. They learn silence early. Children aren't coddled. Childhood is a luxury no one can afford. Every mouth must justify itself. Every hand must carry weight. Even your youngest, if they can walk, is expected to fetch water, gather kindling, and stay out of the way when serious things are happening. You try to be kind to them, but sometimes kindness feels like weakness, so you teach them the same way you were taught, with barked orders and quick cuffs. You don't want to, but you do. You tell yourself it's for their survival, and sometimes it is, because this world doesn't make room for softness, especially not in families, especially not in women. Your wife may have already buried a child, maybe 2. You never talk about it. She wept once, quietly, into her sleeve, while you stood near the hearth pretending to adjust your armor strap. You didn't know what to say, so you didn't say anything, but you remember the name, and you never used it again. Pregnancy is a gamble. Every time she carries a child, she plays dice with death. The midwife comes, the priest hovers, and you pace the hall pretending you're calm while every scream rips your stomach apart. There's no pain relief, no doctors, just hot water, whispered prayers, and luck. Sometimes both mother and child survive. Sometimes neither do. You've seen what childbirth does to a woman. You've seen the blood on the floor, the sweat, the silence after. And you've seen the strength in her eyes when she gets up the next morning and starts baking bread like nothing happened. You've never fought anything that brave. There are others in your household too. Servants, hired hands, maybe your aging mother who still mutters about saints while she spins wool in the corner. You don't talk to them much, but they keep you alive. They patch your torn hose, boil your armor padding, milk the cow that feeds your youngest. They know your moods, your hungers, your boots, and they speak about you in hushed tones when you're not listening, not with fear, not exactly, with knowledge. They know the man behind the sword, the man who snores, who farts during meals, who once screamed because a spider crawled into his breeches during a hunt. You like to think of yourself as a warrior. They know you're also human. Some nights, when the rain hammers the roof and the children are finally asleep, you sit beside your wife and share a crust of bread. You don't talk much. She tells you the cow is sick again. You grunt. She tells you the barley didn't grow. You nod. She tells you that the little one asked if you'd come back next time. You stare at the fire and say nothing, because you don't know, you never know. A knight rides out to serve his lord, or defend his border, or fight in some dispute that started with a spilled drink and ended with 3 villages burning. And sometimes he doesn't return. He's buried on a field no one remembers, his sword passed down, his name spoken once a year during Mass, and life goes on. But you are still here, still breathing, still watching your wife stir the pot with fingers blistered from the fire, still watching your eldest child practice with a stick like it's a sword, still hearing the dog bark at the door like it senses something just beyond the dark. You don't know if you've been a good father. You don't know if your wife forgives you for the things you've had to do. But you know this. They are stronger than you. All of them. They don't wear armor. They don't carry swords. But they fight battles you'll never understand. They survive. And in this world, that's the greatest victory of all. You don't get much rest after training. After a midday meal, if you're lucky, dried fish and hard cheese, you're back on your feet. Armor loosening at the joints, sweat drying into a second skin, stomach grumbling because food never quite fills the void. Afternoon isn't for swordplay, it's for conflict. Sometimes that means war. Sometimes that means something worse. It starts with a summons. A peasant is shouting outside the hall, hat in hand, breathless, eyes wide. There's a dispute. Someone stole 3 chickens from the baker's wife. Someone else says they were owed those chickens because the baker's son broke their fence. Now a goat is dead, and a field is ruined, and fists have been thrown. They want you to sort it. Unwinding, which means you enforce the law, even if you don't fully understand it. There are no lawyers, no courts, no grand trial with witnesses and documents and careful deliberation. There's you, and maybe the steward, and whoever can speak loudest without sobbing. You ride to the village, escorted by your squire and 2 other men-at-arms. The villagers part like you're the Grim Reaper on horseback. They bow, awkward and late. Children stare at your sword. Women hide their coin purses under aprons. Everyone has something to fear. You listen to both sides, or try to. The baker's wife is crying. The neighbor is shouting. A third party joins in and insists it's actually about a sheep from last autumn, not chickens at all. You raise a hand for silence, and somehow they obey, because you are steel, you are law. You sentence the thief, if there was a thief, to a fine, or a whipping, or a day in the stocks where every bored child in the village will pelt them with spoiled apples and mean names. Justice isn't blind here. It's bruised, and it walks on 2 legs. Your legs. Punishments are public. That's the point. Pain is a lesson. Shame is a teacher. Blood dries, but fear lingers. You overseen lashings. A man strapped to a post, back bare, twitching under the whip. You've seen floggings that went too far. A crowd screaming at first, then falling silent as flesh gave way to something worse. You've watched a thief lose a hand, watched it fall into the dirt like a dropped glove. You remember the way he looked at it, confused, like it wasn't his. He bled to death 2 days later. You told yourself he knew the risk. You still see him sometimes in your dreams, and sometimes the conflict isn't petty. Sometimes it's big. Land disputes, water rights, a border argument between rival barons that spirals into burning fields and slaughtered livestock. Then it's not about who's right. It's about who gets there first with more armed men. You might be ordered to lead a patrol, ride fast, burn a granary, make a point. It doesn't matter if the village you're sent to has nothing to do with it. The message must be clear. Your lord owns this land, and anyone who doubts that will bury someone before supper. You don't like it, but you do it, because a knight serves, not questions. And the people, they suffer, always. They live in fear of the next order, the next fine, the next tax hike. And when they can't pay, they beg, or steal, or run. You've chased down deserters, serfs who fled their land because the tax collector came with armed escorts and a list of names. You caught one in a ditch. He was 13. You brought him back. He wept the whole way. They branded his hand. T for thief. He screamed. You didn't. Because you've learned to keep your face still, even when your stomach turns, even when you know it's wrong. Because the alternative? Disobeying. And knights who disobey find themselves replaced quickly. No trial, no appeal, just a quiet word in the wrong ear, and suddenly you're sent on patrol with bad maps and no support. People die that way, quietly, conveniently. So you keep your mouth shut, you swing your sword when ordered, you sign off on punishments you don't agree with, and you convince yourself it's for the greater good, because if not you, then someone worse. Still, sometimes, just sometimes, you bend the rules. You look the other way when a widow steals a bundle of firewood. You lose the report about the boy who insulted the Baron's cousin. You intervene when the reeve gets too eager with his staff. Small mercies, tiny rebellions, things that might buy your soul another day of peace. But you never speak of it, not aloud, not even to your wife, because secrets here aren't just dangerous, they're fatal. And besides, your hands aren't clean, they never were. You've broken bones for coin. You've taken spoils you didn't earn. You once helped drag a woman from her home because her husband owed a debt. She spat on you. You didn't stop the others. You told yourself it was duty, but duty is just a word, and guilt is forever. So when night falls, and you remove your armor one piece at a time, and the cold air hits the skin underneath, you feel every bruise, every scar, and every judgment. You eat your supper in silence, not because there's nothing to say, but because there's too much. Your squire jokes with another. Someone's laughing at a story about a goat in the chapel. You smile, faint, then excuse yourself. You step outside, into the dark, and breathe deeply, because tomorrow someone else will accuse someone else, and you'll be called to judge, to punish, to enforce, and you'll do it, because that's the role, that's the order, that's the oath. And because there's no such thing as clean hands in a dirty world, you feel it before it falls. Night. Not a gentle twilight, not a peaceful dusk. Night here comes like a door slamming shut. Hard. Final. Full of things you can't see. The sky darkens faster than you expect. 1 minute, there's still light on the stones outside the hall. The next, it's gone. Swallowed. The wind shifts. The dogs start barking. And every noise gets louder, because now you can't see what's making it. You gather near the hearth. The fire is low. It always is. Wood is rationed. Peat burns longer, but it stinks. So you make do. You huddle close with the others. Men who were swinging swords this morning now sit like nervous boys, rubbing their hands, staring at the flames like it's the only thing keeping the darkness out. And maybe it is. There are no lanterns, no glowing windows, just torches, candles, the red glow of embers, and shadows that move too much for your liking. You try not to look toward the corners, because that's where the dark gathers. And you've heard the stories, the things that live in the woods, the spirits that drift between the walls, the black hound that sniffs out sinners and drags them screaming into the night, the ghost of the night who broke his vows and now walks the castle grounds, hollow-eyed, dragging a chain of his own melted armor. You don't believe them, except when it's quiet and you're alone, and you hear footsteps on the roof. It could be the wind, could be rats, could be the old timbers shifting in the cold, but it doesn't feel like the wind. You sit on your bench, knife in hand, not for enemies, for anything, because the hall isn't safe. Not truly. The doors are thick, but the latch is loose. You jam a broken spear through the handles each night, just in case. You never know who or what might wander in. Outside, the road is black. No lamps, no patrols, just the occasional flicker of torchlight from the watchtower, and the distant howl of something four-legged that doesn't sound like any dog you've ever met. If you must relieve yourself, you go in pairs, and fast. You keep a dagger in your belt even then. No armor, no helmet, just cold skin and prayer. You step into the dark and swear you feel it watching. You don't talk about it. No one does. But you've all felt it. The pressure, like the night itself, has weight. Back inside, someone tells a story to pass the time. Usually something grim. A haunted field, a drowned knight whose bones were found still clutching his sword, a merchant who died of plague, then stood up 2 days later and asked for wine. You laugh, but not loudly, because laughter draws attention. You eat whatever's left, stale bread, maybe a sliver of salted meat. You drink weak ale, more for nerves than thirst. You keep the fire fed, even if it means burning half a broken chair, because fire means life. You don't fall asleep right away. Not here, not now. You lay down on your bed if you're lucky enough to have one. A few ropes and straw, a scratchy blanket, no pillow. Unless you roll up your tunic, the others sleep nearby, on benches, against the wall, on the floor, cloaked and curled. The snoring begins, then the twitching, then the nightmares. Someone murmurs in his sleep. Another flinches like he's being struck. One cries out a short, sharp noise like a sword pulled too fast from its scabbard. He wakes up gasping, eyes wild. He won't say what he saw. None of them ever do. You try to sleep, but your back hurts, and your thoughts are loud, and there's always something scratching at the edge of your hearing. You close your eyes and see faces. Men you've killed, men you've failed, children looking up at you from behind burning barns. Your father, who said, "Knighthood is a calling," before dying of a wound that festered until it smelled like cooked onions. You turn on your side. The straw creaks. A rat scurries behind the wall. You grip your knife harder. You whisper a prayer to Saint Michael, then one to the Virgin, then one to just anyone listening. Because you've felt it. The shadow, not just darkness, but a presence, something just beyond the firelight, watching, waiting. It doesn't hate you. It doesn't even see you the way a man does. It just knows you're there. And that, someday, you'll come with it. That's the medieval night. It isn't peaceful. It's waiting for death, for dreams, for silence. You think of the graveyard behind the chapel. Small wooden markers, a few stone crosses for the wealthy, no names on most, just dirt and bones and silence. You wonder what your marker will say, if it will say anything at all, or if you'll be left on a battlefield somewhere, armor stripped, face eaten by crows, name lost in the mud. You shake the thought. You try to focus on the fire, the smell of smoke, the rhythm of your own breath, and eventually maybe sleep comes, fitful, heavy, filled with strange images, the clash of metal, a girl crying, your own voice shouting something you don't understand. You wake at least 3 times, once from a dream, once from a noise, once from nothing at all. Each time you check your knife, each time you listen, each time you pray you make it to morning, because night in this world is long and nothing promises you'll see the dawn. It's nearly morning now, but in this part of the world, there's no rooster yet, no stir from the squire, no clang of the blacksmith waking up the town, just the slow breath of sleeping men, curled in cloaks or sprawled across benches, their bodies slumped in strange shapes of exhaustion, of burden, of living in a world where every day takes more than it gives. You lie there too on your scratchy mattress, staring up at a wooden beam that's older than your sword and stronger than your willpower. You shift under your blanket. You feel the weight of your legs, your arms, your spine pressed into straw that never quite flattens the way it should. Your hands are sore. Your knees crack when you move. There's a spot on your chest that still throbs from a sparring blow 2 days ago. You told everyone it was nothing. You laughed when they teased you. But now, in the silence, it pulses like a drumbeat, and your eyes sting, not from smoke, from everything. Today, you trained. You judged a dispute. You rode 3 miles to deliver a message to a neighboring manor. You drank something that was probably meant to be ale. and you watched a man cry after hearing that his wife had passed from fever while he was on patrol. You saw the Baron's youngest son try to lift a sword too big for him, and you remembered what you used to dream of, what you used to think being a knight would be. You thought it meant honor and glory and respect. You thought you'd be known for something, your name carved into stone, remembered in song, whispered in prayer. But now, it feels like survival, like pushing through one more day, eating one more slice of salted meat, drinking one more cup of bitter ale, riding one more patrol, sharpening your blade with hands that shake just slightly more than they did last year. And you wonder, was it worth it? You don't answer, because maybe that's not the question. Maybe the better one is, would I do it again? And the truth is, yes, because for all its pain, its blood, its quiet horror, this life also gave you something. It gave you purpose. It gave you brothers who'd die for you. It gave you the strength to keep going, even when the cold gets into your bones and the dark whispers your name. And somehow, even that is enough. The fire has died low. Your fingers are warm beneath the blanket. There's a quiet hum of breathing, snoring, murmuring, the occasional shuffle of straw. Outside, the night is beginning to fade. You can feel it, a slight shift in the air, the weight of darkness lifting, even just a little. Soon, the squire will stir. The door will creak open. The world will start again. Blunt swords, dull stew, loud chickens, the endless ache of service. But not yet. Now, it's quiet. Now, it's still. You are safe. And for the first time in days, you let your eyes drift closed without fighting it. You think about warm things, not armor, not bloodus, but hands, fireplaces, a bowl of broth with actual flavor. You think about the modern world, where you're watching from now, where your bed is soft, where you can turn on the lights with a switch, where hot water flows from the tap and food is clean, and your home is heated not by fire, but by systems hidden in the walls. You think about medicine, about antibiotics, about dentists. You think about how no one is going to ride you out of bed tomorrow and make you train in wet boots. You are not a knight, and that is a gift. A beautiful, underrated, miraculous gift. So tonight, as your breath evens and your body softens into the bed beneath you, let go of the noise, let go of the weight. You've walked through a brutal world, and now you've walked out of it. You don't have to wake up there, not in that cold stone room, not with fleas in your blanket, not with blisters under your mail. You wake up here, in your time, in your home, in safety. So take a slow, deep breath. Feel your fingers unclench. Let your shoulders drop. You are far from the battlefield now, far from the plague, the swords, the whip, the shadows beyond the fire. You are warm. You are safe. You are free. And that, in every way that matters, is more than any knight could ever dream of. So tonight, as you drift off, remember, you don't have to wake up in the Middle Ages. Sleep well,